As a priest, I understand that love is a part of my heritage in this way. My family are bound up. They are bound together with common ancestry. They're bound up in common struggle. They were bound up in being second-class citizens. They were bound up just like the Hebrew children were on the journey through the desert, although those 40 years. They struggled together. They had to look out for one another, or else they would go under. They had to be concerned about one another's children, or else they would be lost on the journey. This is how I understand that love. And I try and pass this on to my children, because this is a kind of love that you can be passed on from generation to generation with enough information. The scripture says that the sins of the parents are visited upon the children for 7 generations. What that means in the most literal and shallow way, because I wouldn't attempt to give the deep version, in the most shallow way, it means that we can break the cycle of the ancestral curse that has been perpetuated in our families. And one of the ways that we break that cycle is by loving kindness. So if someone in the family is wounded by some sort of abuse, then people in the family have to wrap them in their love. And my family, being ex-slaves, I think about that sometimes. I was born 85 years after the end of the Civil War. I was not born in this whole conflict. This whole idea was not ancient history. This is 85 years after the end of the Civil War. Carl Wallace Berry was born in this little town of Ash Grove, Missouri. So my family came into being just a short time after they were out of bondage. Even though it had been 2 generations that had passed, my mother and father knew these people who were slaves. So they had this bond of love that they established. As I see it, is very scriptural, and it has to do with loving your family and taking care of the ones that God has given you. There's no one on earth that's going to love you more than your wife and your children and their children's children and your own mother and your own father. No matter how wacky they may be, they love you more than I could ever love you. And no matter how off base they are, because they've got this bond of love that's as Langston Hughes says, the great African-American poet who was born about 70 miles from here. As Langston Hughes says, that it's older than the blood and deeper than the flood, this bond that we have between one another. This very ancient connectedness that we have with one another.